This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Hi, my name is Peter Tomasi.
Hi, this is James Tynan IV.
Hi, I'm Dan Jurgens.
Hey, I'm Dustin Wynn.
This is Jim Leah.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Mark Hamill speaking.
This is Kevin Conroy.
This is Tim Sale.
Hello, everyone. I'm Batman, and you're listening to my podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Batman Universe, Season 13, Episode 10. I'm your host, Ian, and I have with me...
This is Theo.
And unfortunately, we are down one host. We all wish Steph recovery from great illness. But we will hold down the fort while she is gone.
What'd you do? What'd you do to her?
Well, I decided to send my used Kleenexes and sneezes in her direction, and she apparently caught it.
Terrible.
Or maybe she just licked doorknobs.
Friends like you.
All right, we have a ton of news. DC still hasn't released solicitations for August, but they have released a bunch of individual things that are happening in August. So start us out with Fear State, which is the crossover with the main Batman title by James Tynan, Catwoman by Ram V, and Harley Quinn by Stephanie Phillips. This is going to be Batman versus Scarecrow and the Magistrate and Peacekeeper 1, and of course Simon Saint, who's behind it all, are going to be big parts of this. It's going to be a 6-issue series similar to Joker War. They haven't indicated if they're going to double ship or not. If they don't double ship, that means it's going to last till about February, so it'll take the rest of the year. They've promised they're going to spin out at least 2, probably more, series, whether it's miniseries or solo or ongoings. I know Theo and I are very determined that one of those series must be Batgirls. So what do you think about the news of Fear State?
As previously mentioned, as long as it is announced either after or during or what have you that we're getting Batgirls, it's a win. But I'm excited for the story also. It's continuing this road for the Batman universe towards Future State, and again filling a lot of potential plot holes that we got in the Future State itself. So I'm here for it.
Do you think that Simon Saint, the Magistrate, and Peacekeeper 1 will be defeated at the end of Fear State?
I don't know. I mean, if we want to think that Future State is going to happen, and I know at the beginning of every issue we're told this is a potential future, but if we're going to get to Future State as it was presented, at least the Magistrate, the program, will have to survive. Simon Saint may go down, but the Magistrate will have to survive.
I think that this is... maybe I'm colored by hope, but I think that this will wrap up the Future State stuff. I think that we are going to see Simon Saint and Peacekeeper 1 defeated. Of course, they can always come back, but I don't think we're going to actually see Gotham fall into the Magistrate that we see in Future State. I could, of course, be wrong, but that's my hope, and that's kind of how I see the way they're setting it up. It doesn't feel like they're going to set up Batman losing that badly.
And I guess my only thing is that has been difficult for me to grasp is the idea that in the end of all the rogues in the rogues gallery, that it's scarecrow that's going to get us to future state, or supposedly it's going to get us to future state. That's just a little difficult for me to grasp right now. I don't put him that high up in the hierarchy of villains.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Low A, high B at best.
I would put him solidly in the middle of B. We also had the announcement of a Clown Hunter one-shot as part of the Batman Secret Files. This is going to be written by Ed Brisson and drawn by Rosie Campe. It also is going to feature some kind of conflict between Clown Hunter and Punchline, which of course makes a lot of sense given that Punchline is a Joker disciple and Clown Hunter is a Joker hater. I'm a little concerned because Ed Brisson has not super impressed me with any of his projects at DC. And Rosie Campe is fine, but unfortunately the stuff I've read by Campe was in Spider-Gwen and had the unfortunate contrast of being right next to Takashi Miyazawa's art, which is some of my favorite art at all of Marvel. So this doesn't excite me a whole lot. I'm kind of bummed that it's not another James Tynion story because I loved the Batman annual that was all about Clown Hunter. What do you think about the Batman Secret Files Clown Hunter one-shot that's coming?
Not too crazy about it, simply because I still haven't found that connection to Punchline. So if more comes out before the issue is released, it may pique my interest, or if I get more involved in the Punchline backup story in Joker, but right now it's pretty low on the wanna read a meter.
We also had Free Comic Book Day announced for August. Interestingly, the rest of the comic book publishers are shooting for, I think, earlier for Free Comic Book Day, but DC's going for August. They've announced 2 teen/adult free comic books and 2 kid, so middle grade reader style comics. The adult comics are a combination of Fear State Preview and John Ridley's I Am Batman, which is another ongoing series that is announced for August, but we don't know a whole lot about whether that's a miniseries or an ongoing or what, but it is a follow-up to Second Son.
Ian?
Yes.
You may want to redo that intro because Free Comic Book Day is for everybody. It's on the 14th, so all the publishers are doing the 14th.
Oh, okay. No, I'll just let people understand that Theo pays more attention to dates than I do. So that's our Batman stuff. Connected to Batman, but not, of course, directly, is they've got a Suicide Squad free comic book to tie into the movie. This is also a 2-part comic, like a lot of Free Comic Book Day issues. The first part is going to be King Shark, which is the prelude to a 6-issue miniseries by Tim Seeley. That'll be kind of wacky. It's also got a preview of Brian Azzarello and Alex Maleev's Get Joker, which features Red Hood and Harley going after the Joker. The middle grade has Batman and Robin and Howard, which seems similar to the Dear Justice League style books, which is about kids interacting with their heroes, and I think it looks cute. I like this kind of thing. There's also an Amethyst thing by Shannon and Dean Hale. Doesn't directly connect to Batman. And then the other younger focus book is going to be a preview of Beast Boy Loves Raven, or Raven Loves Beast Boy, which is a continuation of Cami Garcia's graphic novel spin-off of the Teen Titans in that line. So that'll be nice. We also have the announcement of a Batman cartoon titled The Caped Crusader. This is going to be produced by Bruce Timm, J.J. Abrams, and Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves, of course, is directing the Batman film coming next year. The preview art looks very much inspired by the classic Golden Age with the very wide and outstretched ears on Batman. So that'll be very interesting. It's about time that we had a major animation project centered on Batman. We also, of course, have a major animation series called My Adventures with Superman. That's going to focus on a young Superman, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen. That should be fun. And again, it's about time that they're actually focusing on main characters in their animation after mostly centering their efforts on Teen Titans Go and DC Superhero Girls, both of which are very entertaining shows, but I'm hoping that these cartoons are aimed at a little bit older to sort of get people more into comics, because there are so many people who say, I got into comics because of the animated series. Not me, of course. I got in because of Batman Begins, but I meet so many people who just loved that animated series and really connected to the comics because of that. What do you think about the Caped Crusader announcement?
I will say two things. One, I'm still somewhat of a person scorned whenever I hear J.J. Abrams, because I can't forgive him for what he did to the Star Trek universe, but that's neither here nor there. And two, as long as Bruce Timm doesn't bring up that idea of Babs and Bruce being a thing from The Killing Joke or anywhere along that line, I will be okay, and I'll be all for this.
Those are concerns I also have, but I am hoping that they'll have some good corporate oversight on those types of things and say, this would damage the brand, guys. Let's not do that. We also have two more brief announcements for news. DC Fandom is coming back again. That'll be fun. A lot of panels that I enjoyed last year. And we have the Batgirl film is back on. We've got directors attached. They previously directed... Oh, what was that? It's Bad Boys for Life, the third Bad Boys movie. I have not seen that movie, so I do not know what they're like. And it's going to be straight to streaming, so they're no longer trying for a theatrical release. I don't know. HBO hasn't done a lot of straight to streaming yet. So I don't know if they're going to treat this like some of the cheap Netflix straight to streaming or some of the more serious Netflix. So is this going to be like Bright with Will Smith, or is this going to be like an Asylum film? I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
Bright with Will Smith. That actually wasn't a bad movie.
No, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. I will make the same statement as previously said. I know Bruce Timm isn't tied to the movie. However, as long as they don't make this Babs for Batman thing a thing, I'm all in.
Yeah, I agree. I think that because they have Catwoman, they're not probably going to push for Babs as a love interest. I hope not.
Well, even with Catwoman there, the notion of the notion of Babs running around crushing on Bruce just turns the stomach.
It's not good.
No, it's never been good. I mean, if there was ever anything that was wrong with the animated series, it was that part. Just the idea of Bruce and Babs having any type of relationship other than mentor, father, what have you, is just wrong.
100% agreed. All right, let's move on to our comic reviews. We have two reviews, Robin number 2 and Detective Comics number 1036. We're going to start with Robin number 2. Written by Joshua Williamson, art by Gleb Melnikov, colors by Luis Herrero. Lying on a stone slab, the hole in Damien's chest knits closed, and he wakes to Rose Wilson, the Ravager, telling him what he missed. The rules of the tournament that Mother's soul revealed while he was dead. You have 3 deaths, after which you are truly dead. You may leave at any time. Combat is only allowed during the daylight, and the winner gains immortality. Damien responds by killing 4 or 5 combatants in a row and making his challenge known to Flatline, to which she responds with a wink. Rose tells Damien that his top 5 foes are Respawn, the Deathstroke copycat, XXL, a 10-year-old with an ego and a fan club, Flatline, Lord Deathman's new sidekick, Black Swan, a killer ballerina, and Connor Hawk, brought by the League of Shadows, who seems to be in conflict with the League of Lazarus. Robin finds his gear, Rose looks at his manga, which embarrasses him, and reveals that she's not here to fight for boring immortality, but instead to investigate something on the island, and offers to train him. That night, Robin sneaks to the heart of the island and is surprised by Flatline, who claims to want to be frenemies. Robin rejects her, but together they discover Mother Soul looking at an unstable giant Lazarus pit secretly. Robin disappears, but Rose captures him, telling him he needs to learn how to have fun, showing him a party on the beach. So first question. How old do you think Rose Wilson is compared to Damien? Damien's about 13 or 14.
I don't know, and it confuses the heck out of me simply because this is the same Rose that was sleeping with Jason just 5 years from now in Future State. So I don't know what's going on with that, 'cause she definitely looks far younger than what she did just 2 months ago. So that really threw me off.
Well, I kind of assume that Rose is in like 18 at least, possibly early 20s. I forget what Priest said. Priest said that he was surprised when he found out how old DC wanted Rose to be, but I can't remember if he was surprised because he wanted her to be older or younger than what DC said. But I am pretty sure she's no younger than 18.
How old is Jason right now? Early 20s?
I want to say Jason's like 19 or 20.
Okay.
Because I think Dick is maybe early, like 25 at most, and I say Babs is the same age. And so I think Jason is like 19, 20, maybe 21. Tim is probably 18. Steph is 19. Cass is... I have no idea how old Cass is. She used to be a year older than Steph. Now she seems to be Tim's age, so...
It just amazes me. It amazes me that DC has never been able to fix this.
The ages?
And every time they add a new member to the Bat family, it only makes it worse.
It does make it more complicated, especially if the member is really young. I mean, that's one of Damien's biggest problems, is that he started out as 10, and he stayed 10 until the end of the New 52, and then all of a sudden he was 13 at the beginning of Rebirth, and now, 5 years later after Rebirth, we're bumping him up to 14. And they've never allowed Tim, Dick, or Jason to officially age. So Damien just keeps getting closer and closer to them. Alright, so does it feel like Rose has been reading Stephanie Brown's Batgirl number 17, where she tells Damien that he needs to learn how to have fun?
If Rose is reading Steph comics, we need to have a conversation. But it really did bring back those memories that, again, you and I have always talked about how my appreciation for Steph as a character was gained in that arc of her series. So, yeah, it definitely brought back those memories.
Yeah, it really does. And I'm looking forward to it. I love Rose as a character, and I'm really intrigued about what she's on the island for. Like, what is she willing to risk so much danger from these really deadly fighters just to investigate? Especially since she apparently doesn't want to live forever. So, which of the 5 enemies that we saw highlighted are you most excited to see Damien fight?
I would say Connor, but I think that's a given. So I am going to say Respawn just because.
Yeah, Connor, of course, is the one I'm most interested in long term, because he hopefully will become a hero and will spin off into a Green Lantern book. I hate to be cliche, but it's going to be Flatline, just because they've given her the most personality of the group. And I think it's interesting to see a teen who is basically a zombie. And I think that'll have interesting thematic connections to Damien, who of course has been killed and reborn and was raised as a young child to kill people. So I think that'll have good parallels. All right.
So let me ask this question: so after issue 2, do you have a better idea of where you think the story is going?
I do not. There's 2 major mysteries. Damien wants to know why Talia and Bruce hid the League of Lazarus, and Rose has her own investigation. And I don't know how those are going to be resolved. The only real clue we have is this giant, unstable Lazarus pit, and I don't know how that can go, because Lazarus pits can go so many different directions.
So I'm thinking the underlying plot of the tournament is to feed those souls to the pit. I just think that the League of Lazarus need souls in order for that pit to be more stable.
That makes a lot of sense.
They can remain immortal. When you see that page where they're talking about how, we need more. The only thing I could think of is they need more souls to make that pit more stable.
Well, it could be similar to the Nain pit that we saw in The Fallen of Tom King's Batman run, where instead of a normal Lazarus pit, which revives a dead or dying person, this trades a life for a life. Whereas this League of Lazarus pit could trade multiple lives for immortality. I could definitely see that being the case.
Me too.
All right, so out of 5 Robin rangs, so we have Damien with his little R that cuts through things and he throws. How many would you give Robin number 2?
Again, very good issue. I like what Joshua Williamson is doing right now. So for me, this will be 3.5 Robin R's.
I agree. This is going to be 3.5 out of 5 Robin R's as well. And of course, that means that it is the 3.5 overall. Definitely still excited to see where this series is going.
Whether you are a first-time TBU Comics podcast listener, a 13-year veteran, or anything in between, we'd love to hear what you think about this episode or any of the comics we discussed. Send emails to tbu@thebatmanuniverse.net. Join our Discord server linked at thebatmanuniverse.net. Send us a tweet at TBU_comics. Or, if you're a patron, leave us a comment on our Patreon page. We'd also love it if you left us a review on iTunes. We'd love to read your comments on the next episode of the Batman Universe Comics Podcast. Batman may claim he works alone, but we know that he needs the Bat Family. Join the TBU Bat Family and let us know what you think.
Detective Comics 1036. Story 1, The Neighborhood, Part 3. Written by Mariko Tamaki, art by Dan Moore, with colors by Jody Belair. Bruce's neighbor, Lydia, sees a glimpse of him carrying the body of presumably Sarah Wirt into his house. She chases after them, but is unable to catch up as Bruce locks the door. She bangs on the door, demanding that he opens it, or she's calling the cops. Inside, Sarah begs for help as she begins to deform and shift into the shape of Clayface. There's more knocking on the door as GCPD has arrived due to Lydia's call. Bruce invites them in to search the home. Finding nothing incriminating and no body, the officers and a still upset Lydia leaves. Walking the street in the City Hall district, 2 guys who appear to be members of the Benito gang walk the streets at the request of the Penguin. Suddenly, someone jumps at them from a dark alley. While this is happening, Bruce stands atop a roof in the Gotham skyline, holding the bag with Clayface inside. He pulls on his collar as he realizes that he isn't alone. Huntress is there, pointing her crossbow at him, wanting to make sure Batman is Batman after hearing the news of Sarah Ward's death. As they talk, Clayface oozes out the bag, sliding off the roof before eventually heading towards the sewers. After a brief tussle, they catch up with not Clayface, but Sandra Fuller, Lady Clayface. Batman takes Fuller and Huntress to one of the underground caves, where Fuller tells of how she witnessed the death of Sarah at the hands of Neil, Mayor Nakano's assistant. Batman puts a trace on Neil's cell phone. At City Hall, Mr. Ward confronts Mayor Nakano on the lack of action in finding his daughter's murderer. He promises to end Nakano if answers don't come soon. On the other side of town, Penguin's goons have brought him the guy who attacked them from the alley. There's something terribly wrong with him. Something in his eyes. Batman and Huntress have located Neil on the rooftop of a building. Before they can get answers, Neil lets out a loud scream and dies. There's something wrong. Something in his eyes. As Bruce talks to Helena, they realize Neil's hands are covered in blood. It isn't his, so who can it be? Deb Donovan walks out of her home. She's immediately overcome with shock. On the sidewalk lies the body of her neighbor, Lydia.
So, first question. Where do you think this mystery of the death of Sarah and now Lydia is going?
Oh my God. I have no idea with these eye-warmy things going on. I do not have a clue, and I don't know how it plays into the overall story of the magistrate and everything else. So seeing that was just drew me all in the loop. So I will gladly take suggestions from anyone right about now as to what's going on with that plot line.
Yeah, well, we know that there is something going on with drugs that Simon Saint is testing, and I think those drugs have to do with the magistrate program somehow. Maybe someone has been dosed with the drugs and is this serial killer driven mad by that experiment. So that's my one thought, because we know some things from the solicits, but we didn't know, for example, that Lady Clayface was going to be part of this story. And that's my next question. What do you think of the integration of Lady Clayface? It's been like several decades since we've seen her.
No, she was out. So I was a little surprised to see her. We haven't seen her since Gotham City Monsters a few years ago.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting because you did the reviews for that. So you always tell me, oh yeah, that person you thought hadn't showed up since Nightfall is actually here.
Yeah, so it was a little interesting to see her again. I mean, I don't know what led her to get arrested again, considering she was kind of already, trying to live her life in lonesomeness. But I don't know. But yeah, I was quite surprised to see her. I was really hoping that it was actually Clayface himself making his return. But I'm okay with that reveal.
Well, we did have a reference to Basil Clayface, which I thought was really nice. But I just think it's cool that she's pulling. Like, when a new writer comes in, especially a writer who hasn't done a lot in the DC space before, I'm always worried that it's going to be like Joelle Jones, who says things like, oh man, Catwoman just doesn't have very many villains. And you sit here and be like, Jim Balent made up a bunch of villains for her. What's wrong with you? And so Tamaki, she pulls not just from, Tynan's Detective Comics by referencing Clayface and how he used to be an ally of Batman, but she also is pulling Lady Clayface, who I'm sure she was connected through, Gotham City Monsters, because I think she's friends with Steve Orlando. But That's a deep cut. Lady Clayface is not the most popular Clayface, or even the second most popular Clayface. But I remember her cool story in Nightfall when she and the third Clayface, that weirdo, had a child together.
Oh God, that was memories.
Yeah, I know, a long time ago. How did you think Huntress's appearing in the main story worked? Do you think that it made sense seeing her in the backup last issue, and then she shows up this issue and her story is woven in with the murder of Sarah because her friend Mary was also murdered and she thinks the two cases are connected? How do you think that worked?
So if you read my review of Tech on the website, you will see that is probably the only problem that I really had with this overall issue. The fact that part 2 of Huntress's backup story appeared after the main story. The backup story should have appeared last issue, to kind of bring us into her showing up and appearing in front of Bruce on the rooftop. So that really threw me for a loop. That was probably, it's good again that they're connecting the backup stories to the main story, but it really, I think it could have been done better if the second part of the story, which is actually appearing in this issue, actually appeared last issue.
Yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying. I mean, this is only the third issue of Tamaki's run, right? So the first backup was Robin. I honestly wish they kind of hadn't done that and had started the Huntress story, and then that would have allowed the Huntress thing to flow much more smoothly into this issue. I don't know how else it would have gone, but they could have just put that backup in the front, and then you read that, and then you go into the Batman. It makes more sense chronologically.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe the initial plans were for the 2 Robin stories to just appear in Batman. And I know that was something that you wanted to happen. But yeah, it just, again, the story itself was great, but its placement really, really threw it off.
So, last question for this part before we get into the Huntress backup itself. Do you think Batman is being sufficiently heroic in this issue, in these 3 issues of Detective Comics?
I am going to say no, and I'm saying that, not saying that Batman isn't a hero, but it seems that the hero stuff, they saved the old guy from being taken out by Lady Clayface, but right now what we're seeing Detective Batman. We're seeing him look for clues. We're seeing him trying to figure out the story or what's going on, and all the heroic stuff is happening over in the main book. So, and I'm okay with that.
My next question is, are you okay with this?
Yeah, I am okay with that. What Tamaki is doing with her plots and how she's presenting Batman and Bruce. I mean, she has given us a story and proving that you can have a good Batman storyline that includes both Batman and Bruce Wayne equally doing stuff of significance. And
it's very detective, the internal narration. And I love that we have that newspaper, Bruce's neighbor, Deb, writing newspaper articles. It has such great flavor, such great tone. It's dripping with atmosphere,
And I'm going to say this, and some people may agree and some people may disagree, but I'm going on the record, and I went on the record in my review. I really think that Detective is the best Batman book right now, and it may not be close. Again, that's not taking anything away from what JT is doing. It's not taking away anything that Ridley is doing in Second Son or any of the other Bat books. I love what Tom Till is doing with Nightwing. But right now, with the way that Tamaki is just giving us a lot of meat with not a lot of action, and it's making sense, it's just absolutely insanely crazy good.
For me, I definitely give Detective Comics a slight edge, but I don't think it's like Detective Comics is going 50 miles an hour and Batman is only going 30. I think it's more like Detective Comics is going 50 miles an hour and Batman's going 40. So it's not a huge difference, but I do think that there just seems to be a bit more coherency. It feels more together than Batman right now, and that's I really liked last issue of Batman. So this is, like as Theo said, I'm not knocking Batman, but there's a lot of energy in this Detective Comics run, and people have been saying I want a detective story, I want a mystery in Detective Comics for decades, and we're getting it, and I hope that they show up, because this is good art, it's good writing, this is what people have been saying they wanted. I hope they show up, and I hope this does really well, because it deserves to.
Yeah, and the worst thing about that main story is the fact that it's the last one for Dan Moore for a few. Yeah.
Although it's Victor Bogdanovich coming, so I am a big fan of Victor Bogdanovich. I think that'll look great.
I don't think we'll have an issue, but Dan
Moore has been just jaw-droppingly good.
Oh man, to see him in main book, considering, before this you were looking at Once and Future and Indies, to see a lot of his stuff, to now have him in the pages of Batman has just been unbelievably just crazy, and I've loved every page of it.
And him getting to draw both Batman and one of my very favorite characters, the Huntress, they looked so good together. Theo pointed out this image of Batman and Huntress jumping down after Lady Clayface into the sewers, and it's just classic detective with the capes, and they look so good.
Just awesome. So now, since you mentioned Helena, have they aged her down?
That's a really tricky question, because I always thought that Helena was late 30s, but some people have told me they think that DC meant her to be early 20s, and that seems really young to me.
Even if you compare her in this first arc to how she looked in Birds of Prey, the last run of Birds of Prey with Batgirl, she seemed much more older. She seemed much more mature. The long hair, of course, also kind of makes her look older. But she looks like she can be closer to in between Jason and Dick. You know what I mean?
So you think this one looks early 20s?
Yeah, I would think, again, from how she's being drawn, she's quite young.
Interesting. I don't know. I always assume that Huntress is at least late 20s. So I kind of assume this. I'll have to look at it again to see if I think like they're making her younger. But I didn't feel that way myself. But I will say I'm just really bad at judging ages in real life, so I don't even usually try in comics.
Hey, you did think I was 25 before I told you my age, so yeah, you're kind of...
Well, but I hadn't seen you. We just talked on the Discord. All right, so let's move on to the Huntress backup.
Huntress Part 2, Ex-Boyfriend. Written by Mariko Tamaki, art by Clayton Henry, with colors by Jody Belair. Huntress stands inside the home of Mary Knox, her friend who was murdered in the last issue. Helena scowls through the apartment, looking for information or evidence until she eventually finds info on Mary's ex-boyfriend. She also finds evidence of domestic abuse, and that he has 3 credit cards in Mary's name that he's still using for his own personal benefit. Huntress makes her way to his apartment, where she confronts him on his whereabouts on the night of Mary's death. Her ex, however, isn't going to cooperate, He pulls a gun and fires, missing Huntress. She in turn places a crossbow bolt into each shoulder, pinning him to his armchair. The ex produces an alibi, a plane ticket bought on one of the credit cards in Mary's name. Huntress leaves, but not before promising to make his life miserable for what he did to Mary. She keeps that promise by contacting Oracle. She wants the guy put away for credit card fraud. Helena returns home to find Doug, Mary's cat, waiting on her. She fixes him dinner and tells him that the ex isn't the culprit in Mary's death. But she promises she's not giving up.
So did this seem like a satisfying wrap-up for this two-part story about Huntress?
It was a good wrap-up to the story. My only quip to it is that it ended after the main story, and you knew it was coming, so you knew how things were going to end. But yeah, I think it was a very good wrap-up.
I thought it was nice, especially because you get to see Huntress. This felt almost like a solo mission for the Birds of Prey, because she's in contact with Oracle, and she does her own detective work, and she doesn't let her own biases overcome her judgment. I mean, Huntress is always a character who is ruled by her passions, but she also has enough discipline that she doesn't let the passions overwhelm her. And so I thought that was really nicely done here. It's very much a character piece. It's about Huntress's character. And that's important because Tamaki is going to be integrating Huntress more deeply into the main storyline. And she's going to be writing the spin-off in Secret Files coming in end of July. How does Huntress seem to you in terms of characterization? Like, what version of the character do you see this Huntress most closely connected to?
Well, I won't say it wasn't No Man's Land Huntress, because No Man's Land Huntress was just kind of wild and all over the place to the point where she gets kicked to the curb. Well,
she has too many writers on her in No Man's Land, because you have Devin Grayson and you have Greg Rucka and I think one other writer, and they all pulled her in different directions, so it felt really weird.
I thought it was just Devin that wrote those issues, but I guess not. I won't say it was necessarily her series either. Maybe Birds of Prey, the Gail Simone run.
That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say early Gail Simone, when Huntress was very angry and kind of alone and only slowly learning to trust people again. That of course, is the Huntress that I fell in love with. So this is definitely a positive for me, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of what Tamaki does with Huntress. And last question, do you like this new version of Huntress's costume? I think it was designed by Dan Mora, but we first saw it in full with Clayton Henry last issue.
I do. I like it. I think it's somewhat of a drawback, as well to some previous, bits and pieces of.
Yeah, you've got the classic circle belt buckle from the 90s version, and you also, and the 80s version. And you have the cross from the Jim Lee version on the chest. I really like it, and I think the way that it's drawn helps it be more pleasing as well. Because for example, we can talk about how we get Ghostmaker or Clown Hunter, and how they're designed by Jorge, but when other artists draws them, it doesn't look as appealing. But this works whether you look at it from Mora's point of from Mora's pen or from Clayton Henry's. It looks very good, and I think part of it is due to the fact that you have Jodie applying
the colors to both. So when you have that consistency, it just makes it more pleasing to go from one rendition to the other.
Agreed. The only thing I wish they'd kept would be the ears. I love the Jim Lee ears mask where it really sticks up. I think it's a cool silhouette. But it's...
I don't know why I thought you say you were going to miss you missed the hood.
No, the hood's never been something... I don't hate it. I did like that in Batman and the Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, but I prefer the ears. I just love that. And I appreciate that it's not an overcomplicated design. It's simple, but it's also very stylish and unique to her. So I like that a lot.
So let me ask this question. What is it with heroes just walking in the front door now with their mask off and their costumes on? They don't care about secret identity anymore? Because we see Dick basically do the same thing. Now, granted, his building is pretty much abandoned, but it's just like, yeah, I'm just going to walk in through the front door, through the open window, and, if anybody else is watching, they'll see me, and I don't care. She just walks in the front door, and Doug is sitting there waiting on her. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, unfortunately, the trope of secret identities is something that pretty much no writers are that interested in these days. Tynan sort of plays with it in that Joker knows and nobody else knows who the Bat family's identities are, but it's just not something that any writer really wants to make central to the plot. I don't really know. I don't know. I don't mind it, but I also do have affection for trying to make the secret identity a little more secret. So I only mind when they make it a big deal in the story and then the character treats it like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I found that weird. And did you notice the typo?
Oh, which one?
So in one panel, she asked the boyfriend, where was he 6 nights ago? And then in the follow-up panel, after she then pinned him to the chair, it's 2 nights ago. Did I miss something?
Nah, it's probably editorial. All right, so out of 5 Mudpack members, how many do you give Detective Comics 1036 as a whole?
This is one of those issues where it's not quite a 4.5, but it's way better than a 4. On the site, I gave it a 4 because Dustin rules, and it's 4.5, blah blah blah. But I'm gonna give this here on the cast. I'm gonna give this a very solid 4.25.
I'm gonna give this a 4. It's very, very good, and I'm just a huge fan of Huntress, and I think she was done justice in both the main and the backup stories. So that gives us a 4.13 total review. Pretty high for us. Definitely a good crop of books for our main Batman Universe reviews. Let us go to Greater Gotham briefly. And we're just going to do thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. So neutral could mean you don't have a strong opinion, or you have strong opinions in both directions. It just means you can't commit to one or the other. All right, so Legends of the Dark Knight #1, collecting the first 2 digital first issues by Derek Robertson. This is a Batman versus many villains comic. What's your rating, Theo?
So I reviewed this on the site, and it was not good for me, so I am going to go thumbs down.
I have to admit I'm leaning the same direction. It's well done if you like the kind of thing that it's doing, but it felt too much like uber dark Batman, kind of all-star Batman and Robin Batman. So I'm also going to give it a thumbs down. It just wasn't great for me.
It was almost, and it had some parts in there that just seemed childish.
Yeah.
There was some dark stuff in there that was a little bit too dark for my taste. But then there was other things like the Joker. You ruined it, Batman. You ruined it. Come on. That's not today's Joker. This isn't Batman 66. It's not Batman versus Scooby. Batman and Scooby-Doo Adventures. It seemed too childish for me. And I was disappointed. As someone who owns both volumes, complete volumes of Legends of the Dark Knight, and completely loved the 200-issue run that began with Denny O'Neil, I was very disappointed with the first issue.
Catwoman number 31 by Ram V and Fernando Blanco. What's your rating here?
Thumbs up.
I mean,
way up.
same. I mean, we've both been just praising this comic every month, in and out. So, thumbs up. Since he's been on the book, there was maybe one down issue, and it was a fine issue. It just wasn't as up as the other ones.
Yeah, he's been on fire on Catwoman.
Nightwing number 80. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral?
Come on now. I'm telling, man. Thumbs up. Way up.
Well, this was the Tim Drake issue, so I'm actually going to give this a thumbs up. I thought he did Tim and Dick. I loved their relationship, and there's Chippy Babs, which was great. So a thumbs up for me. Truth and Justice number 4. This was a Red Hood story, and it delves into his psychology. I thought this was okay. It wasn't phenomenal, so I give it a weak thumbs up.
Neutral.
And then we have Batman Black and White number 6, the final issue of this volume. This included stories by Brandon Thomas and Kerry Randolph, Scott Snyder and John Romita Jr., and several others. What's your rating of that?
If Brandon Thomas's story was the only thing in this issue, this book would have been a 5 for me. But the other stories just really... Brandon Thomas's story and Nick Derriton's story, and again, we have another artist who does his own script. Were the only 2 stories that I really enjoyed. The others were meh at best to downright dreadful. When you look at the Snyder and Romita story, that art just, I can't. So for me, that's a thumbs down, and I hate giving a thumbs down to anything Brandon Thomas is involved in.
I'm going to give this a neutral because I think that the Brandon Thomas story was phenomenal. A lot of great art. I actually didn't mind the John Romita Jr. art, but I minded Scott Snyder's writing because I am positive I've read this story from him before. I feel like he's used this exact same structure at least 2 times in the last, 15 years since he started being a major writer. So it's a neutral for me, even though that Brandon Thomas story is phenomenal. And I am excited for his Outsiders. And they better announce that Outsiders.
I just can't believe how the grasp of characterization he has on whatever it is that he writes.
He makes you like these characters in a short amount of time. He's really good at it.
And again, if you all know me, I have hated Duke Thomas since We Are Batman. I hated him through Scott Snyder's run. I've hated him through his own miniseries. I've hated him through Outsiders. I'm not counting the White Knight universe because that's AU. But when you read Brandon Thomas's run, his two stories in Future State, and then you read you read the Outsider story that's currently in Urban Legends. He gets it. I am a fan of Brandon Thomas's Duke Thomas, and I can't wait to see him write Duke Thomas in the fall with Outsiders. I know they have that one shot coming out with Duke Thomas. Why not give it to Brandon Thomas?
Agreed. What are they thinking?
has a grasp on the character. Give it to him. He is just so good. He is quickly becoming one of my favorite writers out there.
Now we're going to do our listener feedback, which we weren't able to get to last week.
Sorry to interrupt, Master Booth. Ringing your phone now.
This needs my attention.
We had a lot on the Discord, and it was really good. We had Borvok, who mentioned that I think that from now on, whenever I summarize a comic book to someone, I'm going to end the summary with, and then his heart was totally ripped from his chest, just to keep the trend from this episode. Well, I think that's a good way to end a review. I don't know if that's a good way to end all your comics. Matches Malone said, I like the idea of the Court of Owls being more of a nuisance than an actual threat. They thrive on corruption and power, which can only exist if Gotham is up and running. The wealthier the city is, the better. The court should be pissed at the damage the supervillains cause. Actually, would be an interesting arc for them to send the Talon against the costume villains, forcing Batman to protect them. Also, y'all sold me on Robin, picking it up this week. Well, I hope you picked up number 2 as well. It's been a really good series, and I agree. I think the Talons are such an interesting concept that haven't been paid attention to in the way they should. I think it works better when, as you say, they function as more of a third party, rather than Batman versus the court. It could be Batman and the court versus someone else, and then the court betrays him, or Batman trying to protect villains from the court, as you suggest. I just think that they don't work as well in a binary conflict.
And as long as they keep Lincoln March away.
Yeah, Lincoln March is the worst part of the court. Literally everything else is cooler than Lincoln March.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with the court. I think what kind of soured me to them is after that first arc in Snyder's run, he kept going back to them. And when you just constantly try to, I guess, force something on readers, it just sours me to that idea. And I think that's where I am. I think the concept of the court is good, and especially how it was done in that first arc. But when you just constantly try to throw them at you and force them down your throat with a follow-up arc, and now there's the Talon issue, and now there's another Talon, and there's all these Talons who, have these ties to other characters in the Batman universe. Hey, Dick, this is your great-grandfather. Love him. You be him. I mean, and it just, it sours, it sours the idea of him. And I'm not totally sold on them being in the Joker story with Cressida, but knowing that perhaps JT has an ultimate plan for them, I'm willing to tolerate it.
Yeah, I think you raise a lot of really good points. I do think that Snyder tried too hard to force them back into things like Zero Year and stuff, and so you just see all these things where it's like, oh, the Court of Owls have always been here. I used to play with an idea of a fanfic where I would bring back the old continuity before Flashpoint, which DC has now done, so I don't need to do the fanfic anymore. But I used to think that the court should have been from the New 52 universe, and they hopped into the universe of before, because there is no way that the court would exist, during Dixon's Detective Comics run, or during, Denny O'Neil's Detective Comics run, or Strange Apparitions. Like, the Court of Owls makes no sense in an old Gotham, in a Gotham that actually has the kind of history with Batman that we had before the New 52. They're a new villain for a new Batman. And I think that it's very difficult to try and do what Snyder did. And I think that he did a great job of introducing them. But then I think that, as you say, I don't think it integrated as well as we'd hoped. The professor, our friend Daniel, said, just finished this week's pod, and FYI, Stephanie Phillips has a PhD in rhetoric and composition. Also, I really enjoyed the conversation regarding the take that Batman could do so much more by donating zillions instead of beating up criminals. That take is cold as ice, in my opinion, for the reasons y'all noted on the pod. There's a long tradition in the comics of Bruce Wayne doing exactly that and spending gobs of money in urban improvement projects, poor relief, etc. He also beats up criminals as Batman. Funny how that works. Hashtag walk and chew gum. I mean, you said it so well, Professor. Batman does not just go around beating up people. He is committed to Gotham as Bruce as well as Batman. And I wish comic writers wouldn't forget that.
Hear, hear.
All right, so that brings us to our support segment. I want to invite anyone who feels like they like our content and want to support us to join our Patreon. You can also give one-time donations on PayPal. We also have a bunch of affiliate links, which link to stores like Amazon, Comixology, Lego, Things from Another World, and GameStop. So lots of nerdy things that you can buy through our links, and I'll give a little bit of your purchase. It won't, of course, charge you more, but a little bit of that purchase goes to the Batman universe to support our servers and hosting. We have our Bat Fan Appreciation Wall, and that's the people who have donated a certain amount on Patreon over the last month. And those people include Gerald Green, Joshua Lappin Bertoni, Rob O, Real No Deuces, Tim Garassi, Robert Lewis, Ian Miller, Stephanie Mounts, Donovan Morgan Grant, Stanton's Grave, Donald Townsend, Ed Grouse, Brendan Roberts, Hannah Garr, Captain America, Mary Garrett, Austin Davis, Johnny McCloskey, and Cesar Diaz. Thank you all for helping us keep the lights on. I really appreciate your support, and I also appreciate all of the things you do for the site. Some of you are writers, some of you comment, some of you engage us on Discord. I really appreciate all of that. Batman Universe is a Batman Universe family, so thank you for supporting us. Next time, we'll be dealing, of course, with Batman, and Detective Comics goes into double shipping. So that'll be
double shipping, baby. Yeah.
I am not as excited as Theo. Hopefully, we'll have Steph to join us again. But until next time, I've been Ian.
And this is Theo. Get well, Steph.
Get well, Steph. And thank you for listening.
Hey guys, this is Steph coming to you from the editing room. Sorry I missed this week's cast, but thank you so much for all the well wishes. I had strep, but I'm feeling so much better today because antibiotics are amazing, as were Robin and Tech. I'm glad you liked them as much as I did. I can't wait to join you next time. Bye!